Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about the state media control in China. Before we get to the serious stuff, let's assume two kindergartens first. One kindergarten has no school rules whatsoever, and the teachers are discouraged to interfere with the children unless absolutely necessary. This kindergarten is founded on the principle of childhood freedom, which means it wants children to be the way they should be. The other kindergarten also has a wide range of freedom, but also a set of rules including no bullying, no cheating, and no being racist, etc. These rules are strictly guarded by the teachers. However, as long as the children do not break the rules, they can have all the freedom they want. My question is, which kindergarten will you send your children to? I believe most reasonable parents would choose the second one, since they would not want their children to be bullied, cheated, and discriminated in school. Now, bear this answer in mind and let's look at the modern history of state media control in China. Ever since the seclusion policy of Qing dynasty all the way to Deng Xiaoping's chairmanship, Chinese people were pretty much cut off from the rest of the world except diplomatic affairs on the state level and the imperialist trades that were forced upon us. In 1949, the communist regime was established in China. There was total state media control because China was still under severe poverty and only the state had the capability to sponsor and run media. People media did not come until Deng's chairmanship. In 1979, in the third session of the 11th Central Committee of the party, Deng announced the comprehensive implementation of the reform and open-up policy that encouraged all levels of the state to learn from the West and build a new socialist market economy in China. Under his core, international interactions, especially trades, allowed many Western ideologies to swim into China with an unprecedented scale. Chinese people started to demand changes in China, many of which were actually granted and patronized by Deng and the party, such as acknowledging certain degree of private ownership. Earlier that year, having seen the party was open to new changes, some started to demand political changes, many of whom didn't fully understand the national conditions in China and were unwittingly blindfolded by Western propaganda. But these people were all too excited about learning anything Western, and they demanded things like democracy and freedom. Oftentimes, they didn't actually know what they meant and how they can be practiced in China. The party was hesitant to adopt such terms in official media channels such as China Daily. Therefore, some printed their own editorials and pasted it on random walls. In Beijing, these editorials were pasted all over a huge wall in Xidan, which is historically called the Xidan Democracy Wall. These editorials get increasingly radical over time, and some of which even question the legitimacy of the communist regime. These anti-party editorials irritated Deng, and he responded in the third session by putting forward the four principles. 1. We must insist socialism pathway. 2. We must insist the communist regime. 3. We must insist the people's democratic dictatorship. 4. We must insist Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism. The four principles set the boundaries of democracy discussion, and the radicals didn't see this as a sign of warning. They waited. A decade later, in 1989, many Eastern European countries were transforming into capitalist states, and the power of the Soviet Union was declining. The radicals mistakenly foresaw similar trend in China. They started protesting and urged the workers to lay off their jobs and students to teach schools to join them. These protests went viral in major Chinese cities, and the whole nation was turning into a fanatic status, where factories stopped to operate, public transportation and infrastructures were laid off, and students dropped schools. Still, many did not fully understand democracy and freedom, and they just listened to the protest leaders emotionally. By no means could Deng proceed the economic construction under such national chaos. Thus, he ordered the military to enter Beijing to clear up Tiananmen Square, where most Beijing protesters were convened. Since the military intervention caused some bloodshed, this event is historically called the Tiananmen tragedy. Either not many people recorded the scene or the government blocked these confidential records. To this day, no exact number of casualties is revealed. The estimates ranges from millions, which is certainly exaggerated by Western media, to around 200, which is so far agreed upon most strict historians. Besides, all Chinese media, including search engines, journalism, and history textbooks, is still being blocked from engaging with this topic. Notably, during the chaos, Jiang Zemin, the mayor of Shanghai at the time, closed the World Economic Heritage, with which most local radicals published their editorials to instigate the innocent people. He also made a public speech at Shanghai University of Transportation to redirect the people being misled. By doing so, Jiang managed to prevent any physical confrontation in Shanghai, and that was more or less happening in other cities. He was later inaugurated as a successor to Deng. After the tragedy, as the reform and open up policies moved forward, freedom of speech was expanding at a staggering rate. Private media companies were allowed to be established, and foreign journalists were permitted to enter and report on China. By the end of the 20th century, the popularization of the internet marked a cornerstone in shaping Chinese modern media landscape. The internet gradually enabled the coexistence of traditional media that media producers produce contents to the people and the ongoing self-media campaign that any netizen can run their public account on media platforms such as WeChat. Still, this media landscape is not without confinements. The four principles always apply, and of course, laws. Having introduced the histories of state media control in China, I hope you will give up saying that in any communist regime, media in its entirety is state-controlled. In fact, nothing is as simple as that. Instead, Chinese media landscape could be summarized with this graph. 1. The official media channels such as evening news direct the general discourse of other media. 2. Chinese media practitioners can maximize their freedom of speech so long as they don't breach the four principles and Chinese laws. 3. The influence of the official media channels are declining, for not many people these days still consume or care for them. 4. Our incumbent chairman Xi Jinping has put forward the four confidence: pathway confidence, theory confidence, regime confidence, and cultural confidence. This means the party encourages more freedom of speech and more foreign or domestic criticism because we are now have the confidence to undertake criticism and still be confident of our uniqueness. In a nutshell, as we can see in the cases of Xidan democracy war and Tiananmen tragedy, had China been completely exempted from state media control, our people would be way more susceptible to and instigated by foreign propaganda and EU media contents, thus creating chaos that hinders the well-functioning of the society. Thereby, the blockade of Tiananmen reports is not totally incomprehensible so long as the party thinks they are chaos stimulators. On the other hand, state media control in China has maintained general societal stability in China in history and at present, which is miraculous if you realize that China has the largest population in the world and all kinds of people may have all kinds of opinions. This stability allows the party to really focus on economic constructions that has brought millions out of poverty. To this point, if you are somewhat convinced that state media control is not entirely a bad thing, let's pick up the two kindergarten model again. In the first kindergarten, there are bullies called Rupert Murdoch and his media empire, cheaters called fake news generators, and racists called alt-right groups. In the second kindergarten, there are also some of these guys, but they wouldn't act as blatantly because they fear that they would be punished by the rules and get kicked out of the game. The question now is the second kindergarten really better than the first one? Think again and you will find that the second kindergarten is only good when whoever makes the rules know what's best for the children. If the rule makers themselves are bullies, cheaters, and racists, they will not see these as bad and rule them out. This logic raises the ultimate problem of state media control in China. It is over-dependent on meritocracy. Can whoever in charge of the state media control align the interests of the state and its people, and can they make the appropriate decisions or set the proper boundaries that will continuously maintain stability and at the same time offer as much freedom of speech as the state can manage? For me, the only solution to this question is that the constant supply of smart and media literate leaders like them. So far, the party has successfully employed many smart people, but it always remains questionable if it can manage to sustain such a supply of true elites continuously. Thank you for watching.